This presentation will help you write the research paper, which we also call the article. It is the traditional college research paper. The length is 4 to 6 pages. The grade is 400 points, so that's 40% of the grade. You've been working on it for several weeks now. In fact, the entire class leads up to this major project. So in week 5, it's the ungraded rough draft due Sunday, no late assignments, and the final version due week 6. There is a 5% late penalty, so you will want to turn it in by Sunday. Now, you know the scenario. You have recently completed a bachelor's degree. You're seeking employment in your field. So therefore, you want to write an article, get it published, and that will help your resume. Now, this is the picture frame for the class. The report itself is the picture. This just gives us the opportunity for Writing 293 students to write on any subject that is valuable to you. Your objective, of course, is to write the best research paper you can on a subject that you care about. So you know the subjects because you've already chosen it. If for some reason you found in the proposal that the subject didn't work, you need to work with me right away and either choose something else from the list or give me another suggestion. Just make sure it's something you've never written on before. Hopefully that will not happen. Hopefully everybody is satisfied with the topics. Now, you know your formatting guidelines. It's request to publish an article this time. That's what you're doing. The requirements are 4 to 6 pages, and you use a size 12 times New Roman font. The appropriate letterhead, you've already got that from previous assignments. It should be 4 to 8 APA formatted sources, and at least 3 should come from the UC library. Single space within the paragraph and skip a space between paragraphs. Use headings, but not in the executive summary. This is too short of a report to justify headings. The components that are required are title page, executive summary, the report itself, and the references page. The illustrations are required, but they're not included in the page count. Now, some students ask, does the title page and references page count in the pages required? And I'm flexible on this. If you need them to count, they can count. If you don't need them to count, they don't need to count. You can go either way. You're creating a structure with 6 sections. So let's start by realizing you start with the title page. That has to be first, not the executive summary. So just keep that in mind. Start with the title page, end with the references page. Of course, if you have appendices such as a glossary, if your topic is very complex, then that would go after the references page. Now, creating the structure. The front matter is just a fancy word for everything that comes before the actual report. So in our case, it's the title page, formatted in APA, because part of this course is professional writing to teach you how to write assignments in the upper level classes, including graduate school, if that's your choice. So title page comes first, then the executive summary. This is the front matter, and you notice if you ever look at a book or report, you'll notice that the page numbering for front matter is usually lowercase Roman numerals. I don't mark off if you don't do it that way, though. Now, the introduction, after you've written the executive summary that gives a brief overview of the entire report, the introduction will state the problem and or opportunity. It could be both. It'll define the scope, the boundaries, the limitations. What are you leaving out and why? Oh, let's just use the topic of buying or leasing a car. If you were writing on that topic, you might say that you're not examining trucks, you're not examining SUVs, you are only looking at the family sedan. Or you might say that you are only examining um, Florida, not other places like New York and California, where prices and what needs to be on the car with respect to environmental concerns, all of that is different. Why are you limiting your topic? If you choose transitioning, you might limit that topic to soldiers in a particular branch of the armed forces, and you could further limit that or limit that to soldiers who are leaving early because of problems. That's what I mean by limitations. Now, the appropriate background information, depending on your topic, it might be historical data that we need to know, relevant laws, definitions, but not definitions of common words that the reader already knows. Research methods. Now, this is the approach you chose to research your project. And again, we get into limitations here. You mainly have to use secondary sources and your own inspections because of the federal government's requirements. There's something called the Institutional Review Bureau. Research universities have these committees that when a professor or a student wants to do a research project, there's a lot of paperwork. There has to be a principal investigator. The PI has to submit the forms required by the federal government. If the project's approved and there's human participants and there's informed consent forms, it's a big process. And we, of course, don't have time for it in an undergraduate 8-week class. You don't need to go into that much detail, but you do need to refer to the fact that what are you using? Secondary sources, your inspections, mainly. Some of these topics are very controversial. They're dealing with the workplace, and the federal government is especially concerned about that type of project. So that's why you have to think about your research methods. Don't go into the workplace and start asking a lot of questions that could get somebody in trouble if the supervisor was eavesdropping. That's the kind of thing the federal government is looking for. This actually came out of the World War and Japanese prisoners being mistreated during research studies. So, there's a whole historical background going along with this. There's certain groups that are at risk, and that it would be any kind of group that could be discriminated against. Maybe workers, you could threaten their jobs, older people, younger people, you include animals in there, anybody whose rights have to be protected. So that is why we aren't using a lot of interviewing and surveying. You need a shorter explanation, but you need to hit on your limitations and what you did decide to use. Now, your opinions and facts reported by the experts in your sources go in the research findings section. You are drawing conclusions about them, but those conclusions are from the experts' perspectives, not your own. You are examining the reasons why you drew these conclusions, okay? So there's two types of conclusions. There's the ones that belong to the experts, and that goes into the expert sections. And then there's your own conclusions, and that goes into a separate section. So you want a heading for research findings and a heading for conclusions. Make sure you draw that distinction. This is actually two sections. One, research findings, everything that the experts reported, and another heading, conclusions, and that's where you analyze what they said. Do you agree with them? Do you disagree? Why? Be very careful about this middle structure because it's actually two separate sections. You own the second section, but in the first section, there should be no opinions, nothing like that. And then we get to the recommendations. That's a brief statement of the problem and or opportunity and your recommendations and your predictions. We have the back matter, which is simply references. There could be a glossary or other appendices as needed. Illustrations if logically positioned at the end of the report. And they will be logically positioned. Choose your words carefully. We don't actually want to run to the Oxford Dictionary. Use words that are easily understood, be concise, correct grammar and spelling, and proofread carefully. Avoid plagiarism, of course. And 3 reminders. Don't write unnecessary words. Don't write as a student. Write as a person who wants to publish an article. And remember, the key point here is that section on research findings. It's actually 2. Research findings and conclusions. That's important. And then don't plagiarize. Good luck with your project.